eyes wide open. You think the Appalachian Mountains are just peaceful trails and stunning views? Well, they can be. But deep in these woods, some have a different experience. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more content, and let's get into it.
When I was 7 years old, my great-aunt died. She lived alone across the road from us, in the same house she was born in. She had never married, never had kids. The house she lived in was over a century old, and there had been a birth or a death in every room. The house held a lot of energy. As my great-aunt aged, she started to get sick, and eventually she knew she was dying. Just a few days before she passed, she gave my mom some instructions. When I die, lock my house for 3 days. You don't let anybody in. I don't want people in my house before I'm cold in the grave. My great-aunt died on a Wednesday. Our family gathered for the funeral. My mother's sister, her husband, and 2 kids stayed in our house. True to my mother's word, she locked my great-aunt's house and didn't let anyone in. We held the viewing on Thursday. The funeral took place on a stormy Friday afternoon. After the funeral, the family gathered at our house. That night, after the storms passed, my mom took me and my 2 young cousins out for a walk. As we stepped off our front porch, my cousin said, "There's a light on down there," and pointed to my great-aunt's house. True to her Appalachian roots and the rule of, if you think you saw something, no you didn't, my mother responded with, "No there's not," and set off to walk in the opposite direction. We walked for a few minutes, my cousin constantly looking back, and finally, not knowing the rule, she said, "There's definitely a light on down there." My mom told her it was likely just a reflection in the windows from lights at our house, but just the same, we cut the walk short and went on back home. When we got there, to prove her point, my mom turned out all the outside lights, but the light was still on. So she turned out all the inside lights, and the light was still on. There was no ignoring it at this point, and my dad, more concerned with intruders than ghosts, decided he needed to check it out. He grabbed a weapon and my uncle, and they walked over to my great-aunt's house. The light was in the kitchen, over the kitchen sink, so they went straight in through the kitchen door. My dad checked the house, assured himself that no one had broken in, then turned the lights out, locked the house, and came back home. He told my mom not to worry, that it was just the light on over the sink, likely a power surge caused by the storms. But the thing is, that wasn't possible. That light didn't work. It had never worked. It wasn't installed correctly, and for whatever reason, my great-aunt had never had it fixed. Years later, when the house sat abandoned and the power to the house was turned completely off, on very dark nights, that light would still sometimes shine.
All right, pull your chair a little closer to the fire tonight. This one ain't just a story I read somewhere online. This was passed down in my family, from my great-grandfather to my grandfather, then from my grandfather to my father, and finally to me. When I was a boy, me and my brother used to sit out behind the old hunting lodge that stood here before this cabin was ever built. My grandfather would feed the fire, stare out into those trees, and he'd always say the mountains remember things people try to forget. One night, after the wind picked up real hard, he finally told us about the thing his own father warned him about. He said there are spirits in the world that stopped walking the right path long ago. People who traded away pieces of themselves for power. And once they crossed that line, they weren't fully human anymore. He never liked saying their name out loud at night, but he said sometimes, deep in the woods, travelers would hear voices calling to them from the dark. Not screaming, not growling, familiar voices. A brother, a parent, a friend asking for help. And the moment somebody followed that voice into the trees, they vanished. My grandfather said the dangerous thing wasn't how they looked, it was how they watched. How patient they were. He told us if the woods ever go completely quiet, if even the crickets stop singing, and you feel like something is standing just beyond the firelight watching you, you leave. You do not whistle. You do not answer voices in the dark, and you never let fear guide your feet. I remember asking him if he had ever seen one himself, and he got real quiet. He stared into the fire for a long time before saying, "Once. Just once." He said it moved wrong, too fast, like an animal pretending to be something else, and its eyes reflected the fire before it even stepped close enough for the flames to touch them. After that, he never hunted alone again. Now maybe it was a warning story. Maybe it was meant to teach us respect for the mountains and the dark places in this world. Or maybe some stories survive because somebody lived through them. Ocio, my friends, thank you for sitting by the fire with me tonight. And remember, not everything in these mountains wants to be found.
Figured I would tell you what happened to me when I was hiking the AT with my buddy back in 2016. Me and my best buddy Alex, we were on the trail for about 2 weeks and we were very close to the bottom of Blood Mountain. As it was getting dark, we were getting, tired. We decided to set up camp right by this stream. What we had with us was a 2-person hammock. So me and him being close as we were, we snuggled up in this hammock together. And as we were trying to go to sleep, we were all of a sudden startled by the sounds of these people running by, just screaming at the top of their lungs. And I really couldn't tell if they were actually scared or if they were just kids messing around. So we tried to go back to sleep, but about 15 minutes later, we hear the sound of these footsteps kind of walking past our campsite. And the creepy part is it sounded like it was also dragging something. So it was these heavy footprints, sounded like something being dragged in the leaves. And then it was also this weird noise that I can't describe. It was something kind of like something sound like this, ugh. It was the weirdest thing. At that point, both of us were invested. We jumped out of our hammock, we grabbed both of our weapons, and we didn't get a drop of sleep all night. As daytime rolled around, we packed up our camp and we started to hike. And right as we got back onto the trail, you saw these footsteps in the mud, and then it was this skid mark behind the footstep. As we're hiking, we're talking about what we heard last night, and now we're talking about what we seen in the dirt as we decided to pack up and leave. Obviously not knowing what or who it may have been, all I know is we make it to our next checkpoint, and I got a call from my mom. We're sitting there thinking oh, maybe it's a skinwalker or something like that, you know what I mean? But my mom called me hysterical, screaming and begging me to get off the trail because it was around that time when a murderer had escaped the prison and he was caught decapitating people on the Appalachian Trail. And yes, you can look this up yourself. This happened.
We have a natural spring that runs directly next to our house. I live in Appalachia. The spring has willow trees growing out of it. The willow trees have kind of fallen years prior, and so they've grown at twisted and odd angles. And it always gives me vibes. So one day, I find a marble in our yard, and I think, I'm going to go leave it over there as an offering of sorts to any potential fae. That was about a month back, and I've checked it periodically to see where it is, and it's always in the same spot. But this week, I moved it. So on my mental health walk outside today, I pass that area. I stay for a bit, enjoying the greenery, and then I kind of move along, walking throughout the rest of my yard. And then I put on the Spirit Talker app and sit on my porch for a bit. I do this from time to time because I have ghosts who live in my house. It's an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, sometimes they like having someone to talk to. And I'm always very careful with who I interact with, my protections, everything. So I'm sitting out in the silence, enjoying the weather, and the word marble popped up. And I'm immediately shooketh. They then send, "Don't rush away," referring to how I didn't stay very long earlier when I had walked by. Already alarm bells are going on inside of me. I then ask, "Do you want me to come back over there?" And the immediate response I get is absolutely. My deity is saying no, 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 over and over again. And my other deities are saying tricks. I already knew this. So I say, "I'm pretty sure you just want to play a game." And the immediate response is, "Certainly." I ask for more protection, And I kind of say, well, I'm onto you. I know what you're doing. I'm not going over there. But nice try. And the conversation kind of ended there. I talked to some other people, but yeah, they moved on real quick. And I swear I have seen something in the tree before. I swear I have seen a humanoid-like thing that looked like bark hiding in the tree. So yeah, won't be leaving things over there anymore.
My experience in Appalachia, and apologies, the background does not match the story, but your girl's on vacation visiting some familia. The story comes from the Adirondacks, which are the region of Appalachia in upstate New York. And outside when I got possessed in a graveyard, this is probably the scariest story that I have, / the scariest hiking story that I've ever had. So at the time, my partner and I were doing a 2-day hike. So we hiked part of the journey and then we camped out overnight. And then we were going to finish the rest of the hike the following day. So this is another overnight Appalachia story where I was camping out in the middle of the woods where no one else was around. I'll add some photos from this hike. We were hiking Algonquin, which is one of the tallest mountains in Appalachia, and we were doing, well, one of the tallest mountains in the Adirondacks / Appalachia. And we were doing, I'll add some photos to it. We were doing a 2-day hike to get out to the mountain because, like I said, it was in the middle of nowhere. So the hike was actually longer than needed. And like I said, no one else was around. My partner and I had set up camp for the night when a thunderstorm started rolling in. So we got into our tent as thunder started crashing overhead. Rain was pelting us left and right. We were fortunately in a tent, which was good, but just the wind was stirring everything. It was a very, very creepy night. We fell asleep to thunderstorms and lightning flashes, and I don't know how we fell asleep, but we did. But what happened after is the scary part. So my partner at the time, he had a Labradoodle that hiked everywhere with us. And so he was sleeping across our feet, and I get woken up to him baring his teeth and growling at the side of the tent, just staring at the tent wall next to me and just growling. And then he starts to bark. And I will tell you right now, he is not that big of a barker. He's not that big of a growler. He's not an aggressive dog. I mean, he's a Labradoodle and he's mostly lab. So you guys get the gist. He is a very easygoing, happy, fun-loving dog. And I wake up to him growling and barking at the fence. And that's when I hear it. I just hear hooves just pattering on the ground across, like about a minute off, I hear these hooves and they get louder and louder and louder. And our dog Pluto just keeps barking, barking, barking. I have to shake my partner awake because he's a heavy sleeper. And then the two of us are looking at each other like, Pluto, what are you barking at? Just stop barking. And then the hooves just get louder and louder and louder. And mind you, if anyone knows how deer behave, they don't come near people. Every time I've been hiking and I see deer, they're off in the distance, they're far away. They don't come near us, especially during a thunderstorm. No other creatures were out. We, as you know, in Appalachia lore, if you don't hear anything, if you don't hear any bird calls or anything, that's typically a sign that something coming near you isn't safe. So the hooves pattering on the ground get louder and louder and louder. And at this point, I feel something is wrong. That's not normal. And Pluto keeps barking at the tent. And then out of nowhere, the hooves are so loud. And I just see a shadow shoot past my tent, like kind of clips the tent, shakes the tent, and then it keeps going. And at first I'm like, that had to have been a deer, right? But there's something in my gut that feels wrong. Like it doesn't feel right. And Pluto's still growling as the figure disappears off into the distance. And to this day, I don't know what happened because deer don't get that close to tents, especially during thunderstorms. Like I said, it's still raining, thunder's still crashing overhead. It was an all in all very terrifying experience and I had trouble going to sleep after, but something came past our tent that night. I don't want to think about what it was, but I can guarantee you it wasn't a deer.
I tried recording this several times and I do not know how to consolidate this into a 10-minute video, so I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to tell you all the specific town it's in for my own privacy, my family's privacy, but I will tell you in this specific town, there was a courthouse fire in the 70s, so all the property records are gone. All we have to go off of is what the real estate agent told us, one living family member that's left, and that's about it. So anything before the 70s, documentation-wise, is gone. Something that was always weird to us, though, is everyone around town would call our house the old McAllister house. None of the family members on the paperwork we do have were named McAllister. So that's kind of also what I mean by it seems like everyone in town knows something we don't. Like even the sheriff one day called it, oh, y'all live in the old McAllister house, I guess. So that's kind of weird. The house is definitely pushing 200, if not over 200 years old. And we can tell this by the features, the architecture. We've had other carpenters, masons, etc. give us their best estimate. It's obviously that old. This house was built before electricity and before running water. I guess we should have known something was weird up front when we were doing renovations, but keep in mind, my parents did not believe in the paranormal, and I was 5. Remember there was this one day I went over there with my mom while she was doing renovations, so we're the only ones in the house, and I'm just like hanging out in my, what's going to be my bedroom, and she's like in the complete opposite end of the house messing with the floors or windows or paints or something. She just like barges in there just like hollering at me because she's like, I told you to stay out of that hallway and stay out of that room while I'm with you. And I'm like, I haven't been anywhere. She's like, I just heard you running up and down the hallway. I told you stay out of there. So Mr. Ghost, that's for getting me in trouble. Some other weird things happened after that, like when my stepdad would like knock on the walls to try to see if they were hollow in some areas to install some shelves, and we would hear knocks back in other parts of the house, and that wasn't the only time that ever happened. Anyway, we get through the renovations, life goes on. In addition to my mom's new marriage, I gained 2 stepsisters. One was older, like a teenager, and then my younger stepsister was like 2 or 3 years younger than me. My older stepsister would only come stay with us on the weekends, and then my younger stepsister lived with us all the time, but she would instead go to her mom's like every other weekend or something. So this incident happened after we'd been there for like probably at least a couple years, because I remember I was young. My older stepsister was in high school. She was a cheerleader. So sometimes on Friday nights when she was supposed to come over, she wouldn't come over till real late because it'd be after a football game. This particular weekend, my parents told me like I'm going to be the only one home, basically. My younger sister is going to her mom's, and my older stepsister is not coming over this weekend because she has like cheer camp or something. So it's Friday night. I'm just doing my thing as like a 7-year-old kid watching Cartoon Network, hanging out with myself, eating some popcorn, and eventually I go to bed. At this time, my bedroom was at the complete opposite end of the house from my parents' bedroom. And through the duration of me telling y'all these stories, I'm gonna refer to these 2 particular rooms as the purple room and the room off the kitchen. That's important. Y'all need to remember that if you're gonna stick around for the series. So at this time, my bedroom was in the purple room and my parents were in the room off the kitchen. The purple room is right by the front door, so when people come in or out, I usually hear it. So I've went to bed. I've been in bed for probably at least a couple hours at this point. And one thing about me, I am a stone still sleeper. So I wake up in the same position I went to sleep in. I've been that way my whole life. I've never tossed and turned. I've never kicked or ripped my blankets off, nothing. So this particular night when I'm supposed to be completely alone, I kept waking up to the sound of my name being called. It was in the voice of my older stepsister. I honestly thought that she had changed her mind and came over for the weekend. Now, mind you, I'm like, in a daze. I'm sleeping. I'm just trying to go back to sleep. You know what I mean? It's siblings. No one cares that much. But I kept noticing that I kept waking up, not just to the sound of my name being called, but I kept waking up because I was so cold. My covers were off of me, like every time. So I'd wake up, I would grab my blankets, pull them back up on me, and I'd try to go back to sleep. Keeps happening, like for hours it seems like. I feel like I was woken up 20 times. And eventually I'm getting frustrated. I'm thinking that she's just messing with me. At a certain point, I'm like, I say her name, like questioningly. Yeah, that was the wrong move. Whoever or whatever this thing was then started to laugh. And it was one of the most sinister laughs I've ever heard in my life. Like just pure terror ran through my body at that point. I grabbed those covers, yanked them up over the top of my head as tightly as I could, and just forced myself to go back to sleep. Even that next morning at the breakfast table, I was like looking all through the house and I was asking, where's so-and-so? And my parents looked at me like I was crazy. And they're like, we told you she wasn't coming over this weekend. And I said, well, I heard her come in last night. And they just look at me like I'm crazy. Well, you must have been dreaming. That was always the explanation when I would tell them strange things would happen. You must have been dreaming. Something else I always thought was really weird was the fact that we lived right on the corner of like these 2 kind of main roads, like for that area. And we never, ever got trick-or-treaters. Never once on any Halloween ever did we ever get trick-or-treaters. We had a whole neighborhood of people around us and nobody ever once came to our house to trick-or-treat. So a couple years go by, we end up having to move. We're keeping the house, of course, but we have to just move like 45 minutes away. So in the meantime, while we are not going to be living in that house, my parents decided to just rent it out to my older brother. This is like a couple days shy of us completely moving. So for the most part, everything's packed up. Most things have already been moved out. My younger sister and I are sharing a room and everything is consolidated, packed in boxes on the top bunk. We're sharing bunk beds at this time, but because everything is like boxed up on the top bunk, ready to be moved the next morning, her and I are just sharing the bottom bunk for the night. I was a bookworm as a kid, and as the older sister, I used to love reading books to my younger sister. So on this particular night, reading books, and eventually she falls asleep. I am on the inside of the bunk bed against the wall. She's on the outside. Right outside our bedroom was a hallway. Right on the other side of that hallway was a bathroom. 3 doorways, if you can imagine, lined up. Our bedroom, the hallway, and then the bathroom. All 3 of those lights were on this night. So when I realized my little sister had fallen asleep, I get up carefully. We usually would keep one of those lights on as a nightlight, you know, but I was getting older. I was like probably 9 or 10 years old at this time. So I didn't really need a nightlight, or so I told myself. Come back to bed, I laid down, turned to face the wall. So my back is facing the doorway, my back is facing the hall, the bathroom, etc. After laying there for a second, I couldn't quite fall asleep because the light coming in from the bathroom was still bothering me. So I decided that I also need to turn the bathroom light off. I turn over to lean up to get out of the bed. And as I start to raise myself up and look up, that's when I came face to face with it. If you can imagine bunk beds, if you're on the top bunk and you lean over to talk to your buddy on the bottom bunk and you're just hanging off the top like that, talking to your friend down below, that's what I was staring into the face of. I'm just frozen in fear, not knowing what the I'm looking at or what is happening. And it's just this black shadow figure of a boy. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a grown-up. It was a boy. I could make out that it was this black shadow figure of a boy just hanging off the top bunk, just looking right in my face. Out of pure fear and adrenaline, as quickly as you can imagine, myself back down, yanked the blankets up, and forced myself to just go to sleep. I bring this up to my parents the next morning, and once again, I'm gaslit. It was probably just a pillow hanging off the top. It was probably just your big, oversized, stuffed animal, whatever. That's interesting because it wasn't there when I had just got up 30 seconds before that to turn the hall light off, and everything was packed up, and it was only boxes on the top bunk. Once we moved from that house, I thought everything would stop and I was relieved, but I was in for a rude awakening because it followed us and it got so much worse. To growing up in a haunted house in Appalachia. Basically, when we moved, my parents picked a mountaintop, said, clear that out and stick a house there, and that's exactly what they did. This was a brand new house in like a brand new clearing in the area, so no history in theory here before us. I don't know what it was, but things got so bad once we moved into this new house. Far more activity, far more turmoil and tension within the household. My mom and stepdad would fight like cats and dogs non-stop. Some other things would happen. I'm not going to share that with y'all. Use your imagination. But things were just different once we moved. The first spooky memory I have in this house happened right after one of my cousins died. So I was about 12 years old. One of my older cousins passed away, unfortunately. And I remember it was like a few days or so, either after she died or after the funeral. I was laying in bed late one night. Again, I was a bookworm, so I used to read a lot of books before I would go to bed, and it would help me go to sleep. Well, this particular night, I could not go to sleep. I'm just laying on my back in the bed, holding the book like above my face, reading it like this. Eventually, I was like, yeah, this ain't doing the trick. So I leaned over to swap out books off my nightstand. I pull the book back over my face, start reading the book. Eventually, I'm just like, man, I just put the book down on my chest for a second, close my eyes like this, and then I just opened my eyes, staring right on my ceiling. Right there above me on my ceiling was this like perfect silhouette of a woman, kind of like in a dress, it seemed like, but it freaked me out. Of course, what do? I just shut my eyes real close tight, pull the covers up, and make myself go to sleep. Now, y'all probably heard me mention before, I do come from a long line of female intuitives, even though we never openly spoke about this in these years. This occurrence was really strange when I told my mom about it. Because despite her gaslighting me on all the other things I'd ever told her about, she acted really weird about this one. So the next morning, I'm just kind of like trying to bring up to her like what's leading up to what I'm trying to tell her. I can't go to sleep, and so I did this and I did this and I did this, right? Whatever, giving her the details. And I just pause, like I just freeze. I just can't tell her what I saw. I didn't even tell her I saw something. I just paused right before telling her what had happened. She gets real quiet, gets real serious. She's looking at me and she says, was somebody in your room? I just remember being so weirded out by this. I just lied. No, I don't remember what my excuse was, but that was strange to me. So to this day, I wonder if maybe she had something happen to her too and just never told me about it. A little bit of time after this, we go camping. Mom and I used to spend a lot of time outdoors at the campgrounds. Well, for whatever reason, we were supposed to go camping this one weekend, ended up not being able to go. I just asked her if we could just go camping on our own property. We had a big deck off the front of the house, and I was like, can we just set the tent on the deck and just have time for us? She agreed. We set up the tent. We camp out on the deck overnight. Been asleep for probably a couple hours at this point, and just out of nowhere, I'm just woken up. Just adrenaline comes over me. I can hear faint footsteps rustling through the leaves behind us off the back steps of the deck. I remember just laying there. I was too afraid to move. I barely moved my head to see if my mom was awake, and I saw that she was. I just barely whispered, "Do you hear that?" And she nodded her head yes, and she did this right here. I remember laying there as still as I could be, my heartbeat just pounding in my ears. I hear these steps continue up the pathway and come up the stairs of the deck, up to the edge of our tent. But since my mom wasn't afraid, I just decided to not be afraid either. I forced myself to go back to sleep. So the next morning, my mom confronts my stepdad because she's convinced it was him playing a practical joke on her. That man swears up and down, hand to God, it was not him. I believed him, not just because I believed him, but also because that man had to be awake at 4 o'clock every morning to go to work. He went to bed, he was in bed. Not to mention, if he was playing a joke on us, he would have scared us. He would have done something. Nothing happened after that. The footsteps just came up to the tent and stopped. A couple years go by, they end up getting divorced, moved out of the house, we stay. One of my other brothers ended up moving in with us for a short time, so it's just my brother, his wife, my mom, myself. There was one night that I was like abruptly woken up to the smell of cigar smoke. I'm laying there thinking it's my brother. Meanwhile, my brother comes out of his room, knocking on my door, thinking that I'm the one who's in there smoking. Nobody in that house had ever smoked cigars. It was strong. Like, it lingered through the entire half of that house. That was really, really weird. But not as weird as what the cat would do. I had a cat during this time. That cat was my best friend. That cat went everywhere I went. She slept on the bed with me every night. She was my little sidekick. And she was fat as you could imagine. Like, her belly would flop against the floor. So that cat was not doing nothing extra if it didn't benefit her. There were a couple nights after that incident that I was woken up by her moving on the bed in the stalker position that cats do. I'd never seen her do this before, and I had that cat for 10 years. She would just slowly creep and stalk her way to the edge of the bed over to this corner of the room, and it would always be the same corner of the room. She would just sit with her eyes as wide as you could imagine. And of course, at the time, I'm just telling myself, oh, it's probably a bug, just go back to sleep. There is no way. One night that really got me was the night that she started growling at whatever it was that she was seeing in this corner. A few nights after that, I was asleep. It's probably late, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Once again, I just abruptly wake up. I don't open my eyes though. I'm just like awake. It's like something woke me up and I was just immediately overcome with overwhelming fear all over again, to the point that I was mentally paralyzed. Like, I could have moved, but I felt like if I moved or opened my eyes, my life would be over. I could literally feel the presence of someone or something in my room. I could feel the presence as if someone were just leaning over me. Their face was right here over mine. I remember just like praying in my head, and I remember just trying to tell myself it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. I've never had that experience before. I just remember the feeling being so overwhelmingly strong. Like, I really thought if I opened my eyes, I would spend the rest of my life in a mental institution. I laid there for what felt like an eternity, just trying my best to go to sleep and like calm myself down. Because of all the things that had happened up to this point in my life, I had become extremely interested in the paranormal. I'd even go as far as to say I became obsessed with it. It's all I would watch on TV. It's all I would research on the internet. My entire life and thought process was consumed by the paranormal. It was interesting to me because I knew I'd had these experiences, and growing up in a little tiny Bible Baptist town, we never talked about these things. I had to make sense of it somehow. This interest ended up leading me down different pathways into things that were dangerous. I had no idea what I was messing with. I had no idea what I was doing. My best friend at the time was a kid that lived down the road whose mother was a practicing witch. To that point in my life, she was the only person that had ever believed me when I told her about everything that had happened. So I more or less went through the doorway of the occult because I didn't know any better. When I tell you things got so bad, other strange things kept happening in the household and kept happening to me. I knew we had probably gotten to a point of no return the night that my brother had a terrifying experience outside. It was late, it was dark. He had went outside on the edge of the driveway to smoke. That man came running into the house, busting the door down, asking for the that he's standing there, and he just got this overwhelming putrid smell that just came out of nowhere and just overpowered. He turns his head out of the corner of his eye. He sees a pair of eyes like reflecting out of the light and this deep guttural growl. From this point, the story does get far more sinister. Honestly, now as a Christian, I'm so ashamed of what took place after this, but I'm here to share my testimony, not just my paranormal experience. Part 3, growing up in a haunted house in Appalachia. I have to pivot to one of my aunt and uncle's houses because I spent a lot of time at this house. Some really demonic things happened in this house. Pretty sure some of this stuff followed me back home to the other house. These stories really tie in together. So I'm about 10, 11 years old when my aunt and uncle buy this house. My cousins are older, like late teens, early young adulthood, and they also lived at this house besides my oldest cousin. The place was like a mansion to us. It was 5, 6 bedrooms, beautiful garage, full in-ground pool in the back, master suite, ensuite, you name it. They got this place for cheap and they got in quick. A few things I thought were really strange when I would go over to visit was the fact that all of the pictures that my aunts and uncles would have up on the shelves would all be faced down, and my aunt wouldn't want me to turn them back up. There were also certain parts of the house that she had never wanted me to go in. She also didn't want me to be alone at any point in time in the house. One night that I stayed the night, she wanted me to sleep right next to them in their ensuite, 10 feet away from their bed. I'd stayed with this aunt and uncle a lot before this. I would just sleep in my cousin's room or on the couch, and it was never an issue. It was really strange to me, but what was even stranger was when we were getting ready for bed, my aunt looked me dead in my eyes and she said, "Sarah, if you get scared at any point in the night, yell for me and I'll be right here, or just come straight into the bed. You can sleep with us in the bed. It's okay. No one will be mad at you. If you get afraid, if you get scared, if you feel alone, anything at all, you just come get us or you just yell for me. I will be right here. Don't be afraid." So that was just really strange for me and really out of character because we had never had that kind of a conversation anytime I'd stayed the night with them before. And I spent a lot of my childhood with this aunt and uncle. Well, eventually I learned why that was. All of the strange things that started off slow when they first moved into the house were things like my little baby cousin would not go into her bedroom. She would not play in there. She would not go in there. She absolutely refused to go into her bedroom despite it being full of toys. Another thing that was strange is my aunt was doing her nightly checks, just peeking in the bedrooms one night, and she noticed that one of my cousins was asleep on the floor with his Bible laid open next to him. Other weird things would happen, like she would hear my uncle calling for her, but no response when she replied back to him. So she'd go up the stairs and he would swear he did not call for her. He didn't leave that spot. He has not said anything. He has not done anything. Or like my uncle following my aunt down the hall into the room only to find that she wasn't in the room. She was downstairs in the kitchen. And the night that I stayed the night, we had a pool party earlier that day for my little niece's birthday party where something literally grabbed my ankle and yanked me back down into the water. The pool was about 12 feet deep. I was the last one to make my way across to get out for ice cream, cake, and presents, etc. So I jump off the diving board, hit the bottom, and as I'm right about to break through the surface, I feel something grab my ankle and yank me down, and I went back down at least a couple of feet, thinking to myself, it's one of my cousins, it's one of the other guests, one of the other kids. So I just make straight way for the surface, make my way to the end of the pool, get out, and I realized I was the only person in there. I didn't say anything about it, but I noticed my aunt looking a little strangely, like she'd been watching. And that was the night that I stayed the night with them, and she told me, like, if I get afraid in the middle of the night, just come over to her. Apparently, other than seeing each other passing down the hallway, even though they weren't there, other than hearing their names called from different rooms and etc. The reason that the pictures were all face down and my aunt didn't want me to put them up is because every time they would reset the pictures up, I would just come down the next morning to find them all face down or completely knocked off the shelves. They also had this custom built giant bookshelf down in the main den above the entertainment center and TV that held a lot of different like pictures and everything. It was a night that all of my cousins were sitting on the couch down there watching a movie, and out of nowhere, this entire piece of furniture falls straight off the wall, almost crushes them. First, my aunt and uncle come running down the stairs, assuming that they're being mischievous, and they swear up and down they did not do it. It just fell off the wall towards them. My little baby cousin not going into her bedroom, I'm going to save for last because it is the most disturbing one. Well, eventually she asked my other cousin about why he keeps sleeping on the floor and not in his bed once she notices this has become a pattern for him. He was hesitant to tell her at first, but eventually he tells her every time he tries to sleep in his bed, he gets woken up to being shoved out of it. Also, on the night that I stayed the night, again, I didn't really have a reaction to anything. They had a little TV on for me. I eventually fell asleep. I did wake up later in the night because my aunt came in to turn the TV off and went back to her bed. Apparently, this never happened. The next morning, my aunt seems surprised that I fell asleep without the TV on, and I said I didn't. You came in here to turn it off last night. Her face went white as a ghost, no pun intended. She immediately calls for my uncle and they step out of the room to have some kind of discussion. I don't know. I think she really wanted to make sure to not show any fear to me, but it wasn't long after that she had my mom come and pick me up. A few more weeks go by and my aunt notices that the cousin who was sleeping in the floor in his room now sleeping in the room with my female cousin and her daughter. Apparently they were experiencing some electronic issues, so like radios turning on, stereos turning on by themselves, full blast in the middle of the night on random stations, etc., etc. I think they only lived there for a total of maximum 4 months before they moved out once they had received the news. One day they come outside to a bunch of police cars just gathered around the house right next to them. When I say right next to them, I mean there was like a fence separating the houses and maybe a foot on either side. So like neighbors. It's Appalachia. Of course, my aunt's going to be nosy and she's going to be the nosy neighbor. Everyone in the neighborhood was being a nosy neighbor. Remember how I told y'all my little baby cousin would not go into her bedroom for anything? Her bedroom was the furthest room out on the side of the house next to the neighbor's house. So this is the neighbor's house. This is the baby's room. The cop cars were there because this particular neighbor had committed what they uncovered as they were looking through the house and trying to find evidence. This man was heavily engaged in the occult. This man was performing witchcraft, voodoo, satanic rituals, and sacrifices. Mind you, every single one of my family members have seen shadows in this house, seen who they thought were other family members, have heard their names being called. The list goes on. And the baby's room was right next door to the neighbor's house. As soon as they got this news, my aunt said, "We are leaving. We are moving." I remember the day we pulled up to church and my mom gets out of the car. My aunt comes running up to her, just pure terror all over her face. She said, "My house is haunted. We're moving. We're leaving." And of course, my mom just laughs at her and she said, "No, this is not a laughing matter. I'm serious." That woman was petrified. The time frame of all of this happening in my aunt and uncle's house, shortly before my parents got divorced, all the other things I mentioned in part 2 started happening.
So it seems like everyone and their mother is talking about the Appalachian Mountains. And as someone who used to live in the Appalachian Mountains, born and raised, it's wicked. So I guess a little story time, just like on my experience. So I used to live in this house. It was like a little old farmhouse, like in a small town. But yeah, so my parents, they moved in, they renovated it, built on it. Whenever they ripped down the wallpaper, there was little obituary cards with a bunch of dead people's faces on it. And I'm talking about a bunch of them. Lovely. First red flag, okay? But it doesn't stop there. So not only were there obituary cards underneath the wallpaper, there was lovely black handprints smeared all against the walls. Perfect. Yeah, they just saw this place. They're like, yeah, we're going to move in and start a family. This is the house. And not only that, there was a weird picture with the solar system, I believe, with like certain stuff circled and like dates and times. I wish I could see that because I feel like there's something going on there. But yeah, so a bunch of random shit. So that house, everyone who visits, they said it was haunted as I lived there up until I was 6, but every single night I would have the most craziest nightmares, or experiences. Literally, I would wake up and see spirits, whatever you want to call them, standing above me. This one time, it was like this guy with a mask holding a machete like he was about to slice off my head. So little old me gets the out my bed, runs to my parents' room, which is downstairs, and I did this every single night because I was getting terrorized every single night. Okay? The one night, I remember laying in bed and we had no bedroom door in our hallway. So I'm sleeping on my bunk bed and my sister, I think she was there, but we shared a room. So I remember looking out into the hallway and I could just see what looked like the face of a skeleton. You could only see the white highlights just glowing in the darkness. Oh my, it felt like I was staring at the thing all night. It did not move. It did not move. It did not shake. It was there just staring while I was staring back at it all night until I passed out. And of course, woke up like morning daylight. Nothing's there. But yes, we just stared at each other all night. Little 4 or 5-year-old me just staring at this skeleton looking face just emerged from the blackness. Love it. What else? Oh, my sister, she said that she saw, we used to have this like sliding open kind of drive-through window on our front porch. And like she said that she was just like goofing and gagging, having a good time, like playing around, looking out the window, and she sees a deer. Okay. Cool, lovely. Mind you, our house is right next to the woods. So she sees a deer. It's like standing up in our driveway. This deer gets up on its hind legs, from all four to its hind legs, and starts walking. Walking. No. No. So of course she flipped her shit, as she should. What was it? I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. The Appalachian Mountains, you don't know what the f***'s going on up there, alright? Every night, not every night, but we would hear this wailing screaming coming from the woods, which people said was a bobcat. Could have been. But my intuition, them woods, it could have been a bobcat, but I'm not buying that. I've experienced enough creepy in that forest to know what's up. So it literally sounded like an infant screaming at the top of its lungs in the woods. Bro, go on all the time. What else? I don't know, guys. Like, I really don't know. It's so much stuff happened in that house, in that area, that it's just like ingrained in my childhood. It's like traumatic experiences that like come up to my brain. I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. But yeah, the only nightmares I get are about that house.
I'm back with more Appalachian ghost stories. So here I am during the famous witching hour. It is currently 3 a.m. in the morning. Okay. Now I've told you previously that for some reason in our house, on our property, we have discovered that 3 a.m. is when it's a bad time to be in the main part of the house. By 3 a.m., you'll start to hear noises. You'll hear footsteps. Things will move. The spirits like to have free reign of the house, and 3 a.m. is their time to do it, so we let them. If you're up late watching TV and any of us see that it's like 2:50, 2:55 getting close, we go, oh, sorry, and then we run to our bedrooms. Specifically, I remember I was watching TV very late at night, and me and my sister were in the living room, and all of a sudden we hear a chair slide across the floor in the kitchen. We look at each other. We know nobody's in the kitchen. We look at the time. It's 3 a.m. We say, sorry, and we go to bed. So here's the thing. I'm going to show you the view. I have my window open. I like to sleep with my window open because I'm a silly goober. But here we are in Appalachia. As you can see, it just goes into darkness. Now, one ghost story I wanted to tell you is not the one that I previously stated, that Native American spirits, or so we think, haunt these hills, because when all of these houses were being developed, we found artifacts, right? Now, I have another
person who I think haunts the area, and it's because I've had dreams of her throughout my entire life, because I've lived on this hill my entire life. I have constant dreams, not constant, but over the years, of a woman in old-time garb coming up this hill and taking things. When I was little, I would have dreams of her coming and like taking my younger brother and taking one of our pets, one of our cats, taking our things. And she never says anything, but she always looks exactly the same.
Hello.
Hi, Jake. You just gave me a heart attack.
So, last night, right in my neck of the woods, search and rescue was called out to look for what appeared to be a baby that somebody captured on their security camera. Now, they did what I believe any of us would do, I hope, and that is contact the authorities. So, they came out, did their investigation, and they came to the conclusion that it was just a glitch. Now, I don't know if I'm buying it, but I have gathered all that I could, and I'm going to show you, and just let me know what you think. Alright, here is the original post. Here's a close-up of the baby. And here is the official report. Some more information with the timestamps. And right here you can tell 1 minute apart there's a baby and then poof, no baby. As if this isn't spooky enough, it gets even weirder. Her daughter took this picture and it looks just like the baby. Whoa.
My cousin was found dead in a lake in a major city, and he tried to make contact with us before his body was discovered. So I was at work, and I got this phone call. At the time, I had a beauty channel, and I had a Diva ring light. Well, they told me that they were in the backyard, and upstairs, they seen, and if you've seen a Diva ring light, they're huge, okay? And the only way that you could turn my light on was if you flipped the switch, okay? And the switch wasn't like easy to flip or anything like that. It wasn't sensitive. You had to put like a decent amount of pressure behind it. And when I went to work, I never left it on because it put out a lot of heat and it also took a lot of electricity. I actually still have that light. I mean that they were in the backyard and that the light just randomly like flipped on. And they noticed it, and then they seen a shadow up in my window. And then when they mentioned the light flipped off. So they instantly thought, someone broke into our house, and they thought that we weren't home, but really we were in the backyard. So the house is built on a bank, okay, like this. So my aunt goes around front, and and it's a split level home, and she goes upstairs. So if you don't know what a split level home is, it's exactly how it sounds. When you go through the front door, you either go upstairs or you go downstairs. So, there's no in between, okay? You have no choice. So, my aunt goes upstairs where the activity happened, and my sister goes downstairs. Meanwhile, they're fully prepared to clobber someone and call 911, okay? They're positive someone's in the house. So they both go in the house very aggressively, and they're like hollering, trying to intimidate whoever is in the house. My aunt goes into the room where the activity was and the shadow was seen, and she said that she felt like something was watching her. But she wasn't sure what it was, but there was no one there. My sister didn't have any activity downstairs. Nothing happened at all. It was just normal downstairs. Well, they call me while I'm at work and tell me about this. And, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. So while I'm at work, I also hear about how a man was discovered in the local lake but this was a couple counties over in a bigger town, okay? And I didn't really think much of it. What you don't know is that like a week prior, my uncle had came over and he was struggling with addiction. He had been on and off, but he was a really good guy. It's just unfortunate, really. And, he wanted to do yard work for us, which wasn't like uncommon or anything. He made a lot of money doing yard work for people, cleaning up brush, weed eating, whatever, you know. So he asked us if he could make some money and do that, and he did. So he knew exactly where we lived and everything. And I feel like we were one of the last stops he had before he decided to go to rehab in this major city. Or the next day, we get this horrible phone call, and they were able to ID the man that was in the lake. And it was my cousin, unfortunately. And I just had this feeling come over me. He was trying to tell us to find him. He was trying to tell us that he was gone. That he had passed over to the other side.
Listen, I love a good scary story like the next person. I've also had like encounters with scary things in the past. So I would say I'm pretty spiritually in tune. And I also know when you're getting closer to the lower, the devil's trying to take you down. Anyway, I don't know if that's what's happening in this situation because there's some factors I forgot about. And I'll tell you that after I tell you the story. So first of all, I'll set the scene. Last night, I get home late from a serving shift. It was probably like 11:30, 11:45 that I finally get my shower and I'm settled down drinking my own tea. And I was gonna scroll on TikTok and this girl's videos popped up, the scary one, and I said, oh no, we're not gonna watch that. So I'm just watching something else, just other things, just avoiding the scary things at night because I know myself. So anyway, the night goes on. I'm like not sleepy and it's starting to kind of give me anxiety because it's like I have to wake up early. At this point, it's like midnight, 12:15, 12:30, and I'm like, okay, I really gotta put the phone down, but let me go to the bathroom first. So I was already spooked just because I had this like feeling of anxiety, not just about the time of me waking up, but just like there was this feeling in the room that something else was in the room. And I was like, no, Jen, you were just watching something scary earlier in the day and now your imagination is messing with you. Nothing's happening. Nonetheless, I still put my phone's flashlight on and then I went to the bathroom, which the bathroom is right there. And so I could see the light in the little toilet room. I was almost done, mid-pee, and literally the lights turns off. And of course I'm like, oh my gosh, scares crap out of me, because I'm like, why would my light just turn off? There's no reason for my light to just turn off. My husband's sleeping. Death of the world at this point. My 3-year-old's not in here. Maybe the cat could have accidentally like turned it. I don't know. Anyway, I had to muster the courage to run back over here in the dark. I grabbed my phone. It's completely dead. No, it wasn't on charge. It had 50% left, but it was dead. Just dead. And I was like, well, maybe it did like a system reboot in the 1 minute I was in the bathroom. I don't know. So I like frantically am like trying to get it turned on. It turns on and I see that my husband's like our really close friend had called. Like I saw his name as if he called. But then like when I went to go look for it, I couldn't find it in my phone. So I was like, he's not gonna call me unless something bad's happened. But I couldn't muster the courage to like go look at my husband's phone because I was spooked at that point. Why did my phone just die? Anyway, so the night goes on. I'm tossing and turning, just this overwhelming anxiety for nothing, really. Like, nothing stressing me out at this point in life. Like, we're doing good. Like, I don't know why I have this anxiety. So anyway, literally tossed and turned all night. Eventually, the 3-year-old came in bed. Tossed and turned after he came in bed. And finally, like, I would say around 3:30, I was able to get, like, one REM cycle of sleep before my husband's alarm went off. And then I was actually able to go to sleep after that as well. And then my alarm went off to get my daughter to school. And I was like, there's absolutely no way. Like, I am so tired, so exhausted. She wasn't awake yet. She had just gotten back from her dad's house. She's honestly depressed. And so I was going to she's 8, but I was going to let her wake up naturally and take her to school. Out of nowhere, my Alexa goes off. That's in my living room, or my dining room, kitchen. It starts playing a song. No one was up. No one talked to it. The song that it played was George Strait, Amarillo by Morning. While I know that song, we don't put it on. We don't think like, oh, you know what song sounds good right now? It naturally will come on sometimes in like a playlist, but it wasn't playing. It had just started playing by itself. Yeah. So that's how my past 12 hours have been going. It's great. I told my husband's cousin about it because she's like my really good friend. And she's like, well, you've been doing a lot of thrifting and getting all of these vintage plates and teacups. And I looked up one of them, one set that I got. I literally just got, the artist or the creator, whoever made them, it was from 1900 to 1930. That's how long he had created these plates. So these plates have lived a life. Was it that? I don't know.
Everyone is throwing in their Appalachia spooky stories and lore on TikTok right now, and I thought I would throw my hat into the ring. I have a couple stories of my own and lore from the region I grew up in. So a lot of people associate Appalachia to the Appalachian region for good reason, which is like West Virginia and Tennessee. But Appalachia extends all the way up into Canada. And as a New Hampshire resident, we actually have one of the hardest ranges of Appalachia through our state, also known as the White Mountains. Anyone in the hiking world who knows anything about hiking knows that the White Mountains don't play. They're some of the most dangerous regions on the East Coast for just any outdoors experiences. A lot of people, and I get frustrated, other local hikers get frustrated when hiker tourists come into the region and don't respect these mountains. Rule number one of this region of Appalachia, you respect these mountains. Hundreds of hikers die and go missing a year because they don't respect these mountains, especially our tallest mountain in the region, Mount Washington, which a lot of people call the Everest of the East. You guys might have heard of this mountain. It tracks some of the fastest wind speeds in the world. It has some of the craziest weather conditions. And a lot of the locals and Native American tribes from the region claim it's because the mountain itself is cursed. It has some of the hardest skiing in the region called Tuckerman's Ravine. But anyone who knows Mount Washington knows if that mountain doesn't want you on it, you listen. Whether lore or local weather patterns, Mount Washington has to be respected. And that's just one part of the region. Anyone hiking the Appalachian Trail knows the hardest region of that trail is in New Hampshire and to respect it accordingly. A lot of people believe that just because the mountains aren't as tall as, say, the Rockies, that they're easy to hike, and that's just not the case. And once again, you can lend this to just the super volatile nature of this region of mountains, or you can lean into the more supernatural side of things. Either way, this is still part of the Appalachian range, so Appalachian rules 100% apply. For those of you who need a refresher, it's basically never operate with any sense of fear. If you hear something, no, you didn't. If you see something, no, you didn't. Stay on the trail, lock in, and do not mess around with things you don't understand. As a hiker, I respect this 100%. As a local, I respect these trails and these mountains so incredibly much. And there was one time, I have one story, where I believe that heavy respect protected me. So my partner and I at the time were finishing up a double summit hike. So we summited 2 mountains in one loop, and then we were on our way home. On the way down from the second mountain, we realized that we were not going to be making it back to our cars before dark, which for someone who isn't experienced and didn't pack and prepare, that can be terrifying. Fortunately, we packed our headlamps. Unfortunately, the battery died in mine. It just started to dim, like something was draining its energy. And I'll tell you, it was creepy as creepy can be. All the trees were just silhouetted against the night. There was fog building up. When we were crossing empty fields, there's abandoned farmhouses. And really, you got to keep your eye on the trail. 1, because you're going to fall. And 2, because you don't want to stare at something too long, like up into the trees, and see something you weren't supposed to see. During dusk and into nighttime, there is one thing that to this day I still can't explain. And it wasn't scary, but looking back on it, even myself and my scientist brain, I can't explain it. For miles, at dusk and at night, we could not escape this very sweet apple scent the entire time we were walking once the sun started going down. And at first I thought we were going past trees or some type of foliage or flowers that flowered in the fall or something. But no matter how much I looked, there was nothing that I could find that grew in that region that had that smell. During the time, I thought it was a very positive presence. My partner, obviously, he smelt it, but he's not like the spiritual type. And he just completely brushed it off, ignored it. But I was like, there is no way that this is a plant, because this has been following us since dusk. And usually if you're hiking, the smell goes away as you hike away from a specific plant or something. I'm like, neither of us have apples on us. We didn't smell this during the day. Why now? And of course, I'm scouring lore of Appalachia. I'm looking up different things, trying to figure out what that scent was because we both smelt it. It wasn't just me, it was my partner as well. And like I said, he doesn't believe in supernatural lore whatsoever. So the fact that he smelt it and admitted that it was weird that it was following us, weird. And at this point, if you know what this is, let me know. But personally, the only thing I could think of is that it was a protective spirit. The smell was so sweet and comforting and protective that part of me almost believes that something in the mountains understood that we were both hikers who respected that region, who loved that region, and spend a lot of time in that region. And I think since we were there past the dark, past when it was safe to be in those woods, something saw that we loved those mountains so much and was protecting us. And that's the only thing I can think of because despite how creepy and, due to Appalachian lore, dangerous our situation was, we never had any really negative experience. As long as that smell was around us, we were safe. We made it back to our cars and we got home safe. To this day, that's the only explanation I have. If you stayed this long, respect the mountains, respect Appalachia, and just enjoy the beauty that nature brings. And if you carry that respect, I think it gives you an ounce of safety in those woods.
This is about the scary ghost ladies that were just always lurking. The first one's around 2006 or 7. Dad's coming home one day, and he sees my mom sitting on the couch. Like the curtains are shut, but you can see like her outline. You can see it's very clearly my mom, whatever. So he's like, I'm gonna scare her. This would be so funny. So he quietly gets out of his car. He sneaks up. He goes, and he's, trying to quietly unlock the door, and he jumps in and he says, "Rah!" My mom comes out the laundry room. She was like, "Oh, you scared me. Hey, how's work?" He's like, "How did you get in there so fast?" She was like, "I've been in here doing laundry the whole time." And he's like, "So who was just sitting on..." Basically, he had seen a ghost woman sitting on the arm of the couch watching TV all the way up until he walked in the house. And as soon as he opened that door, there was nothing there. And then she's thinking, okay, he's just messing around. A few weeks goes by. She's walking around the house, and just in the corner of her eye, she sees the exact same woman sitting on the arm of the couch. There was one time my sister at her mom's house, she kept seeing this lady in a white dress. And everyone's like, okay, you're really young. Like, maybe you're just seeing stuff. Your brain's just really overactive. And she's like, no, like, I'm consistently seeing a woman in a white dress. Why does nobody believe me? So I ended up doing some research, and I realized that the time period of like the woman that she was seeing, how she was dressed, what she looked like, I looked it up. In that area at that time, there was so much religious cult going on, and women were dressed just like that. And I was like, ooh, girl, that's creepy. And there was one time as I got older, I think I was in like maybe 2nd or 3rd grade. I was in the bathroom mirror and I was brushing my teeth. I don't with mirrors for a reason, and this is one of them. I'm standing there brushing my teeth, and I'm being a kid doing stupid shit. Like I'm making faces. And I started doing this thing where I would like blink my eyes really hard and open them. And I would make a different face each time because it was making me laugh. Like the quickness of seeing a new face and not knowing what it would look like. There was a quick flash where I opened my eyes and closed them again. Why the f*** is a woman in a white dress standing behind me? I got so scared and I ran out. I told my mom, told my dad, and they were like, talking about it to a therapist that I had at that time. And the therapist is like, she's probably just watching scary movies. Like, I wouldn't worry too much about this, ghosts, kids are overactive. And I'm just like, I know what the fuck I saw.
If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe so I can bring you more chilling content. And until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.